Hey folks, and welcome to the Garden Canvas. I'm glad you joined us. It is mid-March right now. Things have warmed up a little bit and got cold again. I wanted to talk about a common mistake that new gardeners make. It's one that I've made, it's one that many of us have made, and that is purchasing plants too early in the season. Right now is an interesting time of year because we've all been stuck up in the house. We've been itching to get outside and get some sunshine and do some things in the garden. We've got cabin fever, ready to be outside in the garden with our hands in the dirt. And so it's very, very easy when we get a little warm spell in late winter, early spring, to get overzealous and ready to get out in the yard and start seeing stuff looking green and alive and a lot of things blooming, a lot of color going on in our garden. And that is one of the things that retailers know is true. As soon as we get that first sign of a little warm spell, retailers will have the garden centers full. And so if you don't believe me, if you live anywhere, like in my zone, I live in zone 8, just go to one of your big box retailers and you're going to see blooms in their nurseries in many of the warmer zones, particularly right now in the south or in other parts of the country that are zone 7 and above right now. What you don't realize is happening is that most of what you see, all that beautiful color, those beautiful plants that you're seeing in the garden centers right now are grown in greenhouses. They're grown under optimal conditions throughout the winter because retailers know, the growers know that when they can produce beautiful plants, we find them irresistible. We're going to fill up our shopping carts, take them home with us, and put them in the ground. Well, the problem with doing that this time of year is the weather can be kind of fickle, meaning you can have a 70-degree day or a 70-degree spell for a week, and then the following week you could have a freeze. So you need to know what your average last frost date for your area. You need to know that, and you can look that up online. You can Google your zip code, look up average last frost date. My area here in zone 8A in eastern North Carolina, my average last frost date is somewhere between April the 1st and April the 15th. And around here, cooperative extension people will tell you, kind of look at tax day, which is April 15th, and once you get to tax day, you're usually pretty safe to plant your vegetables and a lot of your tender annuals and tender perennials and things like that. So just realize that when you go to a garden center and you see things blooming, that those were not grown out in our temperatures. They're grown in a greenhouse. So avoid making that purchase right now unless you have a way of protecting the plants and you're familiar with how to do that. This is an example. I picked this up at our big box store recently. This is lamb's ear. It's Helen von Stein lamb's ear. It's one that we had been looking for. This is a perennial for our area. And as you can see, this is a really beautiful, healthy plant. Well, I can tell you I have lamb's ear in the ground right now that does not look like this. It's still trying to emerge out of the winter dormancy period. So I'm having to protect this. I bought this realizing that I could not just put it out in the ground right now and expect it to be okay, because if I do, it's going to experience some winter frost damage most likely before we finally warm up. And that's what you have to keep in mind when you're going out purchasing plants. There are some things that will be fine. You can purchase violas. Dianthus right now is probably okay to purchase and put in the ground. There are some plants that you can buy right now that are more cold tolerant. You can purchase kale for your garden. You can put in lettuce, cabbage, your brassicas for your vegetable garden. You're going to see things like petunias, calibrachoas, all kinds of lilies for sale right now. Maybe see daisies and things like that. Well, this is not the time of year that you're going to be able to plant those in the ground and expect them to thrive. And so if you do buy those plants, then make sure you're protecting them. And I'll show you a couple of ways you can protect them if you're expecting a frost overnight. It's going to be really important that you keep an eye on the weather each night until you get past that comfort zone where your plants should be pretty safe from a late freeze or frost. There are some ways to protect your plants. You can bring them inside, you can bring them into the garage. If you've already made the purchase and maybe have already gone outside and planted these types of plants, And what I would recommend doing is every night that you're expecting freeze or frost, make sure you water the plants in thoroughly. Sorry about that. That's our Air Force Base next door. Give that a minute. That is the sound of freedom. So it's loud, but I do love that sound. That's an F-15E Strike Eagle. So one more. So where was I? So yeah, if you're going to try to protect those plants that you've already put in the ground, you can water those plants in on the night before you're getting a freeze. Water them in very, very well. And you may wonder, why would I water it in? Well, water will actually help insulate the plant at night. As the water evaporates, it forms a type of insulation around that plant, and it will help protect that plant from frost. Now, it's not going to be the end-all be-all to protect it from frost. You're going to need to cover the plant as well. If the plant is small, maybe it's a small perennial or small annual that you've put in the ground, you can just take an old nursery pot like this and turn it upside down and lay that right over the top of the plant. Just don't damage the foliage, and just lay that right on the ground. You might put a rock or brick or something heavy on top just to weigh it down from wind, and that will protect it. If the threat of freeze has passed the next morning, you can go ahead and lift that off of the plant after the sun has risen and the temperature has warmed up a bit, and at that point the plant should be safe. There are other ways to plant it to protect larger areas. You can use an old bed sheet. You can use plastic or tarps, but I don't recommend that as the best option. It may provide some protection, but I've experienced winter damage when I've used plastic or used just a basic tarp. You can use a frost blanket, which is what they use in the nursery trade. You can order that online as well. And if you've got larger areas or maybe a vegetable garden, you can lay that across your vegetables and it will protect your plants as well. A good way to know if this is the right time of year to purchase, if you're in doubt, just look around your surroundings. You know, when I look around, I see I've got a Japanese maple here. Obviously you can see there's no leaves on this Japanese maple. It's not ready. It knows when it's time to leaf out, when it's safe. Your plants will tell you a lot. So look around and see what's emerging, see what's coming up in the ground. Most of what we have coming out of the ground right now is going to be daffodils. Forsythia here is starting to bloom. Those are some of the most early blooming plants of the season. Some of the daylilies are the foliage is starting to emerge out of the ground, but they're not blooming yet. There are other plants that are emerging. Your weeds will tell you a lot. Dandelions are coming out of the ground. So there are things that are emerging, but when I look around and look at my perennial beds, I don't see a lot of growth from things like coneflower, rudbeckia, a lot of other types of plants that'll be blooming in the summertime. So your plants are telling you a lot, so just look around your surroundings and you'll learn a lot from what you're seeing out in your garden. So I hope this is helpful, and it is a good lesson for us all. When I go to the box store and I see things, I'm just like you. I'm tempted. Ooh, I'd like to have that for my garden. Ooh, that's really nice. And it is so tempting right now. Even for experienced gardeners, it's very tempting to be in the garden center and want to purchase something that looks really beautiful, that looks very alive and healthy. And it's just a temptation that you just have to be aware. Either be patient and wait a little longer, or be willing to protect those plants and bring them inside until your weather has warmed up enough that you can be safe leaving them unprotected. So again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell for notifications as well. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.